Hello everyone, thank you for coming out today. Today we will be discussing the CSOE lesson plan template. So let's get right into it. First, you're going to need to state the grade, the subject, the summary of the lesson, and then the theory, which you will discuss which one of the 5 educational theories you will be using in your lesson. Then come the standards, the ISTE standards, and the Common Core standards. Next, we're going to talk about a measurable objective. What will your students be able to do through this lesson? Now, you don't want to write what they will know or what they will understand because that's not something that you can measure. Let's continue. How are you going to assess understanding? Will you use formative or summative assessment to capture student understanding? That's something that you'll need to think about. For diverse students with different abilities, how will your lesson plan support the needs of those students? Students with different needs, for example, could be English language learners or at-risk students or possibly advanced learners. We want all students to succeed in this lesson plan. And on the topic of students with different needs, how will you differentiate your lesson? Differentiated instruction allows students to show what they know in different ways. Now, one of the most important parts of teaching is classroom management. How will you create an environment that everyone feels safe learning in? It's not an easy task, but it's definitely doable and worth it. A lesson typically includes 5 parts. Let's dive right into it. So first, the opening is where you engage students into what new thing they'll be learning. It's important to really catch them at this step. Otherwise, you will lose them, and they'd probably rather look out the window for the next hour. Next, you're going to introduce the material. Key things to consider here are academic language, assessing for active participation. What questions do you think your students are going to ask? Congratulations, you made it this far. Now you will have a guided practice part of your lesson. This means examples by you and hands-on learning by them, your students. We're saying no to boring lectures and yes to learning by doing. Now is when the students are going to become independent. At this point, they should have very clear expectations about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and the objectives of why they're doing what they're doing. What are you, the teacher, going to be doing during this time? What if a student wants to take the lesson further? How will you support them? After you finish the independent portion, you can close the lesson through an assessment. Maybe they take a quiz or answer a few questions on a worksheet about what they have learned. All right, the dreaded H word, homework. Will you give your students homework to continue to practice, or will you be merciful and continue this lesson and build on it tomorrow? After the lesson is over, you will rationalize what social and emotional competencies students use in your classroom, such as communication and collaboration. Also, what character qualities? Some examples of this are leadership or initiative. Going back to standards, although not very exciting, but important, what in TASC, ISTE, and TPE standards are supported by this lesson. You will also have to reflect on if your lesson succeeded to effectively demonstrate these standards. To think about how the lesson went, you will reflect on how you taught the lesson. You're going to create a pre-teaching reflection and a post-teaching reflection. Did the lesson meet your expectations? Did the students grasp the material in the way that you were hoping? As someone going through this process, this lesson plan can seem daunting at first. It is different from lesson plans that I've seen in the past. It's definitely much longer and more detailed. For example, I've seen lesson plans that include the basics, but failed to include information about diverse learners, differentiated instruction, and assessment. This lesson plan also adds a pre and a post teacher reflection portion, which I've also yet to see in other lesson plans. 3 things that I find difficult about this lesson plan are the section on diverse learners, differentiation, and guided practice. In terms of the first 2, it's already difficult teaching to a classroom of students with similar abilities. Mix in others in the pot and it becomes much harder. What will I actively be doing to support every student with different needs? That's a good question to think about. That is something that I'll need to think about. In terms of guided practice though, I might find it difficult to figure out how to monitor and correct student performance while I'm teaching to everyone. I think most of my predicted difficulties have to do with figuring out how to multitask and deal with students who learn differently all at the same time. I would love to hear what you all find interesting or difficult about the CSOE lesson plan. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.